What up, nerds? My name is Clay Cooper. I am the Director of Test Prep at Prep Expert. I'm also a perfect scorer on the SAT and the ACT, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about my 5 best tips for doing better on the SAT reading section. So before I explain each tip individually, let me give you a quick rundown of all 5. Tip number 1 is understand that the test is always right. Tip number 2, make sure you answer every question in your own words. Tip number 3, prove every answer you choose referring to the passage. Tip number 4, leave the hardest passage to you for last. Tip number 5, watch out for extreme language. So we'll start with number 1. You need to understand that when it comes to the SAT reading section, the test is always right. I have to explain this to my students in every class that I have and with every tutoring student that I've ever had. Just like in the math section, it would never occur to us to doubt whether the test was correct in crediting a particular answer. We should have the same approach in the reading section. Let me explain what I mean. When I miss a math question, it never occurs to me, maybe the test is wrong. Maybe the answer I chose was actually correct and the one that they chose was incorrect. I just find out, oh, I missed that one. And I immediately think, what did I do wrong? How can I get it right next time? You should have the same approach in the reading section. Now, I understand that that's not natural to most of us. Most of my students, when they miss, at least sometimes when they miss a question in the reading section, they want to argue with the test, right? I have felt the exact same thing. I know what that's like. I pick an answer and I think, nah, I'm pretty sure that's right. Even after I look at what the correct answer is, I might still feel like the answer I chose is better. But that attitude will keep you from scoring well on the SAT. If you view the reading section as being subjective, as having gray area, then you're going to have a really hard time getting better at it. Instead, take the same approach in the reading section that you take in math. When you miss a question, just know the test is perfect, the test is always right. So if the test says I missed this, then I missed this. Instead of wasting time and energy arguing with the test, spend that time and energy looking through the passage to try and figure out where the proof is that shows why you got it wrong. That's a recipe for success. That'll help you raise your score in the reading section. Tip number 2 is a strategy that we here at Prep Expert call BOSS. Build your own simple solution. In other words, basically you should answer almost every reading section question in your own words before you look at the answer choices. Now let me explain why. Have you ever had the experience of you read a question, you think, all right, I got this. I know what the answer is. I remember reading that in the passage. And then you read the answer choices. And by the time you're finished reading the answer choices, you have no idea what's going on. Don't even know what day of the week it is. I know the feeling. It happens a lot. In fact, the answer choices are specifically designed to confuse you, to throw you off. So, bossing, or answering every question in your own words before you look at the answer choices, helps you through that. It allows you not to be distracted by good-looking but incorrect answer choices. So if you've ever been confused and distracted by the answer choices, you need to try this strategy. Here's how it works. After you read the question, but before you look at the answer choices, answer the question in your own words. You will rarely be perfect. It'll rarely be the case that your answer absolutely perfectly matched what turned out to be the correct answer, but it will still help you tremendously. What you'll find is it's much easier to sort through the incorrect ones and the correct ones if you've answered the question in your own terms before you looked at the answer choices. It'll be a lot easier to see when an answer is way off. It'll feel really, really good when you read an answer and you're like, that's almost exactly what I said. That must be it. There's no better way to efficiently sort through the answer choices in the reading section than by answering every question in your own words. If you're worried about it taking you longer to do this and slowing you down, in fact, you may be thinking, man, I already struggle with timing in the reading section. I already feel time pressed. I don't have enough time in this section. And now you want me to stop and answer every question in my own words before I look at the answer choices? Let me assure you, if you master this strategy, it will make you faster. Again, let me repeat that because it's always true. If you master bossing, if you master the strategy of answering every question in your own words before you look at the answer choices, It will make you faster. It'll prevent you from having to waste time banging your head against a wall trying to sort through answer choices that have got you confused. It'll help you see which ones are right and eliminate which ones are wrong. So I encourage you to try it. Again, answer every question in your own words before you look at the answer choices. Tip number 3 is to support every answer that you choose with proof from the passage. So I want you to understand that on the SAT reading section, every correct answer is supported by evidence that can be found within the passage. A lot of my students don't realize that, but for every answer that the test gives you credit for, there is something in the passage that supports its being correct. So if you adopt the mindset of always trying to find proof in the passage for the answer that you chose, you'll find that you get more questions right. Here's what that looks like. Especially on questions that I have a hard time with. If a question has got me confused, I want to, as much as I can, make sure that I'm taking a hard look within the passage for a reason to pick one of its answers over another one. Maybe I like B and C and I'm not sure which one I should choose. Then I'm going to look in the passage and try and find a reason in the passage to pick B over C or vice versa. The reason I do that is that I know that the test always gives me a hard reason to pick one answer. The SAT is given to millions of people each year, and so they really can't get away with asking you a question for which the answer is made up and not supported by something within the text. They always have to give you something in the text that supports the answer that they give credit for. So take advantage of that. Find that proof within the passage for every answer that you choose, and you'll find that your score goes up in the reading section. Tip number 4 is really a strategy tip, and it's this: save the hardest passage to you for last. So the passage topics in the reading section fall into 4 categories: history, literature, science, and social science. So there will be 2 science passages, and that makes up a total of 5 passages in the section. Here's what I want you to do. If there is a particular passage type that you find most difficult, or that as you take practice tests you seem to get fewer questions right on than on any of the other passages, that's probably the hardest passage type for you. If you do identify which is the hardest passage type for you, you want to make sure that you do it last on test day. Let me give you an example to illustrate what I mean. Let's say that the history passage is hardest for me. For whatever reason, I just find it confusing and I seem to get fewer questions correct on the history passage than on any of the other passages. Well, on test day, as soon as I identify which passage is the history passage, I skip it. I leave it for last. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. I am going to try and do it. It doesn't mean that I don't take it seriously and try as hard as I can. I will. But it does mean that if there's a passage that I run out of time on, if there's a passage that I have to hurry through because I'm running out of time at the end of this section, it will be the history passage, which was already going to be the hardest passage for me. So again, another example, if the literature passage is the hardest for you, leave it for last. That way, if you run out of time or if you're under a time crunch at the end of the section, then the passage that you don't get to devote the full amount of time to was already the one that was going to be hardest. That will allow you to get the easy points while you do have time and leave the harder points for when you may be running out of time. That's a good strategy, and that's why we make sure to leave the hardest section for you to last. My last tip for today is to beware extreme language. And this tip is actually derived from tip number 3, which requires you to prove every answer that you choose by finding evidence from the passage that supports it. The reason that supports the idea that we should beware extreme language is this: if the meaning of my answer choice is extreme, it's going to be hard to prove. Let's take, for example, an answer choice that said, Johnny is the best student ever. If the answer choice claims that Johnny is the best student ever, is that going to be difficult to prove? Yeah, definitely. If it says Johnny's a good student, is that easier to prove? Of course it is. There's a big difference between good and best ever. And that's why we want to beware answer choices that claim things like best ever. That's going to require a really high bar of evidence in order to support it. So, since I'm looking within the passage to find evidence for every answer that I choose, a corollary of that is I want to beware any answer that contains extreme language. What you'll find is many answers are incorrect because they say something that is generally along the right lines, but they take it too far and they make too extreme of a claim. They make a claim that's in the right direction but goes too far, and as a result can't be proved. The test makers purposefully include these extreme answers among the incorrect answer choices in the reading section. So you should make sure that you keep an eye out for extreme language. Words like any, every, all, everywhere, always, everyone, anything like that. Any word that's extreme in meaning. Keep an eye out for it and make sure that before you choose an answer that contains it, you find evidence in the passage that supports it. I think you'll find that a lot of the time you won't be able to find that evidence. And that's why we want to beware any answer choice that contains extreme language. Please don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful. You can also subscribe to Prep Expert's YouTube channel for other videos just like this. And we'd like to hear from you. Leave us a comment in this video and tell us what you'd like to hear about next. What do you want advice on from a 2-time perfect score? We may feature that as the topic in our next video. You can also visit our website, prepexpert.com, for exclusive offers on all of our products, from in-person classes to online classes with myself or another instructor, to tutoring with any of our instructors. So until next time, keep working hard.